welcome seeker.
There is a book whispered about in hushed tones, a text said to guide the soul through the ultimate mystery of existence, death. For centuries, it has been hidden in the shadows of monasteries high in the Himalayas, preserved by chanting monks who speak of realms unseen, of visions that tear the veil between worlds. This book is known to the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but to its keepers, it is the Bardo Thodol, the liberation through hearing in the intermediate state. What makes this text so haunting is not merely its description of the afterlife, but its insistence that death is not an ending at all. It is a mirror, a revelation of the mind's deepest truths. And if we dare to look closer, we realize something staggering. The teachings it offers are not only about dying, but about living. Imagine for a moment, standing at the edge of death. The breath leaves your body, the familiar dissolves. Time unravels. What appears next is not a dark void, but a tapestry of dazzling lights, deities of light and wrath, endless echoes of your own mind. The Bardo Thodol tells us that what you see at that threshold is not some distant heaven or hell, but the reflection of your own consciousness. Yet here lies the secret. If the afterlife is a projection of the mind, then so too is this life. The great hidden message of the Book of the Dead is that we are already in the Bardo, already wandering through shifting illusions of fear, desire, and identity. This realization transforms the text from a funerary manual into a practical philosophy for daily life. In this exploration, we will venture beyond the cliches and superficial readings. We will uncover how the Tibetans understood the nature of reality itself, why they believed death was the greatest teacher, and how these ancient insights can be applied, not in some distant monastery, but here, in the chaos of modern existence. We will ask, what is consciousness when stripped of the body? Why do the Tibetans insist that liberation can happen at the very moment of death? And more provocatively, what if you could learn to navigate the labyrinth of the Bardo now, while still alive, to awaken a greater freedom? The journey ahead will weave together history, philosophy, and esoteric wisdom. It will challenge the way you think about death, and perhaps the way you live your life. So listen carefully, for what you are about to hear is not just a story of the afterlife. It is a story about you, about your mind, and about the hidden dimensions of reality waiting to be uncovered. This is not a tale of endings. It is a revelation of beginnings. And like the monks who recite these words to the dying, I invite you to let the teachings fall deep into your consciousness, because what you are about to hear may change how you see the world forever. And if you wish to keep walking deeper into these mysteries, subscribe to Labyrinth of the Veiled, where the forgotten is remembered, one secret at a time. Share your thoughts in the comments and keep the conversation alive. To understand the Bardo Thodol, we must first journey into the mountains where it was born, where the wind carries the sound of prayer wheels and the valleys echo with mantras whispered for centuries. Tibet in the 8th century was not merely a land of snow and silence. It was a crucible of spiritual experimentation, a meeting ground where Indian Buddhism, indigenous Bon traditions, and esoteric tantric practices merged to form one of the world's most profound mystical traditions. The Bardo Thodol itself is attributed to Padmasambhava, the legendary lotus-born teacher who brought tantric Buddhism from India to Tibet. In Tibetan lore, Padmasambhava was more than a man. He was a master of realities, a sorcerer saint who tamed the local spirits and infused the land with sacred teachings. The text is said to have been hidden as a terma, a treasure teaching buried in rock, water, or consciousness itself, so that it might be revealed centuries later when humanity was ready. This idea of a hidden treasure is not accidental. In Tibetan philosophy, truth is not always accessible in its time. Wisdom appears when the seeker and the world are prepared. The Bardo Thodol was revealed in the 14th century by Karma Lingpa, a Turton, or treasure revealer, who discovered it not as an author, but as a messenger. What we have, then, is not a static book, but a living revelation. Philosophically, the text is rooted in the concept of the Bardo, which literally means in-between state. To the Tibetans, life is not a single continuous thread, but a series of transitions. There is the Bardo of living, the Bardo of dreaming, the Bardo of dying, and the Bardo beyond death. Each state is an opportunity for awakening, or for entanglement in illusion. This vision of existence challenges the Western view of life and death as opposites. For the Tibetan masters, death is not the end of life, but another stage of mind's unfolding. To them, consciousness does not simply vanish when the body ceases. It continues, flowing like a river, passing through thresholds where the mind encounters its own luminous and terrifying projections. The Bardo Thodol describes these thresholds with astonishing vividness. Radiant deities of light that embody wisdom, wrathful beings that personify fear, dazzling lights that lure the unprepared. Yet all of these, the text insists, are not external gods or demons. They are the manifestations of the mind's own nature. Liberation comes not from running away or clinging, but from recognizing them as illusions of the self. What is extraordinary is how this mirrors broader Buddhist philosophy. The Tibetans inherited from Indian Mahayana and Vajrayana thought the idea of anyat, emptiness, the ultimate truth that all phenomena lack inherent existence. In death, this truth is revealed in the most dramatic way. Everything the self believed to be solid dissolves, and only pure awareness remains. Why, then, was this wisdom hidden? Because the teachings were never meant for casual reading. To confront the Bardo Thodol is to confront your own death, not as a concept, but as an imminent reality. In many cultures, death is feared, avoided, even denied. But in Tibet, it was embraced as the supreme teacher. The book was recited to the dying not to comfort them, but to awaken them in their most vulnerable passage. The Western world first encountered the Tibetan Book of the Dead in the early 20th century, when explorers, translators, and mystics began to study it. To many, it seemed exotic, even frightening. Some read it literally, as a guide to what happens after death. Others, such as Carl Jung, saw in it a map of the unconscious, a psychological journey through the archetypes of the human psyche. In truth, both perspectives hold weight. The brilliance of the Bardo Thodol is its layered meaning. It is simultaneously a guide for the dying, a meditation manual for the living, and a mirror of the human condition. It can be read as metaphysics, psychology, or mystical poetry. And yet, all point to the same truth. The Bardo is not only after death. We inhabit it here, now, in every moment of uncertainty, transition, and change. To study the Bardo Thodol is to step into a tradition that does not separate philosophy from practice, nor death from life. It asks us to see reality as a shifting dream, and to discover within that dream a possibility of awakening. This is why the text still speaks to us today, not as a relic of a vanished culture, but as a timeless manual of liberation, offering insights for anyone willing to face the deepest questions of existence. The heart of the Bardo Thodol lies in its description of the Bardos, those thresholds of transition that reveal the hidden nature of reality. To enter this teaching, we must first abandon the idea that the Bardo only concerns what happens after death. The Tibetans remind us, every breath, every dream, every moment of change is itself a Bardo. Death is simply the most profound and unavoidable of these transitions. The text divides the post-death journey into distinct stages, each revealing deeper truths of consciousness. The first is the Chi-Kai Bardo, the moment of death itself. Here, the dying person experiences what the text calls the clear light of the primordial reality. This is not light in the ordinary sense. It is the radiance of pure awareness, unconditioned and infinite. For those trained in meditation, Recognizing this light is the opportunity for liberation. For the unprepared, it is too overwhelming, too blinding. They turn away, falling into lesser states of perception. Next comes the Schneid Bardo, the Bardo of visions. This stage is both magnificent and terrifying. The text describes peaceful deities radiating sublime colors and wrathful beings with fearsome forms. Yet the teaching insists these are not external gods, but the mind's own projections. To the enlightened, they are recognized as manifestations of the self's true nature. To the fearful, they become prisons of terror. Then comes the Sidpa Bardo, the stage of rebirth. Here the mind, unable to recognize the projections as its own, gravitates toward new forms of existence, drawn by desire, fear, or unresolved attachments. The Bardo Thodol describes this as a kind of magnetism, where consciousness seeks the conditions that mirror its own karma. This is how rebirth occurs, not as punishment or reward, but as the natural continuation of unawakened mind. What makes these teachings so profound is not their metaphysical speculation, but their psychological clarity. Think about it. How often in life do we encounter a clear light moment, a sudden flash of truth, an experience of something greater than ourselves, only to turn away because it is too much to bear? How often do we project our own fears and desires onto the world, seeing angels or demons in people who are, in truth, mirrors of our inner state? The Bardos are not distant realms. They are our everyday struggles, magnified in the crucible of death. The Bardo Thodol is not a book of doom, but of opportunity. Each stage of the Bardo is described not to frighten, but to remind. Recognition is liberation. The wrathful deity becomes terrifying only if you forget that it is your mind. The dazzling light becomes unbearable only if you resist its brilliance. The path of awakening is not about escaping these visions, but seeing through them. One of the most striking aspects of the text is its emphasis on choice. Even after death, the soul is not entirely powerless. The instructions are clear. Do not cling, do not fear, do not follow the lights of confusion, but turn toward the truth of awareness. Liberation is always available, even in the most chaotic of states. This is a radical teaching, for it suggests that freedom is never bound by circumstance. This is why Tibetan lamas read the text aloud to the dying. The words serve as a reminder, a guide through the bewildering visions. They whisper, recognize this as your mind. Do not be afraid. Do not be attached. The voice of the living becomes a lifeline for the one journeying through the thresholds. Yet, in a deeper sense, the book is not only for the dying, it is for all of us right now. Because here lies the hidden truth. Life itself is a rehearsal for death. Every moment we cling to illusions, every fear we project onto others, every truth we resist is a small rehearsal of the Bardos. And every time we let go, recognize, and awaken, we practice for that ultimate passage. Before we move deeper into these mysteries, I want to leave you with a question. What if the Bardos are not waiting for us at the end of life, but unfolding around us at this very moment? If that intrigues you, make sure to subscribe and share your reflections in the comments below, because in the next part, we will peel back the layers even further, exploring the paradoxes and hidden meanings of these teachings. To understand the Bardo Thodol more deeply, we must confront its paradoxes. On one hand, it reads like a literal guide to the afterlife, mapping out a geography of visions, deities, and rebirths. On the other, it insists that all of these are illusory. How can the same text speak of radiant Buddhas and terrifying demons, yet also claim they are nothing more than the mind's projections? This tension is deliberate. The Tibetans were masters of symbolic language, weaving layers of meaning into every image. To the uninitiated, the text reads as myth, a story of cosmic beings and otherworldly landscapes. But to those who look deeper, it is a manual of psychology, describing the very mechanisms of perception and attachment. The demons are not out there. They are the fears we carry. The Buddhas are not distant gods. They are the luminous potential hidden within us. Consider the vision of the wrathful deities. With fangs, weapons, and blazing eyes, they appear terrifying. But the text whispers, "Do not be afraid, for they are your own mind." Why would enlightenment appear so dreadful? Because to the ego, the dissolution of illusions feels like death. The mask of terror conceals the truth of freedom. Liberation often comes disguised as fear. Another paradox is the role of choice. The Bardo Thodol tells us that even after death, consciousness can choose whether to recognize the visions as mind or fall into confusion. Yet it also teaches that karma, the weight of past habits, pulls us inexorably toward certain states. Are we free or are we bound? The answer lies in the middle. The text reminds us, karma creates momentum, but awareness can intervene. Like a river with a strong current, it may sweep us along, but at any moment we can choose to swim toward the shore. There is also the mystery of the clear light. The text says that at the moment of death, every being encounters it. This means that ultimate truth is not hidden from anyone. It shines equally on the saint and the sinner. Yet most fail to recognize it. Why? Because it is too vast, too simple, too ungraspable for the mind conditioned by form and identity. We look away, preferring the comfort of familiar illusions. In this way, the Bardo Thodol is not about the rarity of truth, but about the rarity of recognition. One often misunderstood aspect is the role of rebirth. To Western eyes, the descriptions of seeking a womb or being drawn by desires may seem strange, even fantastical. But what if these passages are metaphors for the ways we constantly seek new identities? Every time we refuse to face the naked truth of impermanence, we are reborn into a new illusion, whether as anger, craving, or sorrow. The rebirth of the soul and the rebirth of the self in each moment may not be as different as they appear. Modern psychology has begun to recognize this. The process described in the Bardo Thodol mirrors the cycles of trauma, projection, and healing. The visions are the mind's archetypal language. The clear light is pure awareness, described by mystics across traditions. The rebirths are the ego's endless attempts to anchor itself in shifting sands. Seen this way, the Tibetan text is not an exotic curiosity. It is a universal map of the human condition. This is why the book is both revered and feared. It does not merely describe what happens after death. It strips away the illusion that we are in control. It reminds us that clinging, even to our sense of self, leads to suffering. At the same time, it dares to say that freedom is always within reach. Even in the darkest vision, the light of recognition can break through. So when people ask, is the Bardo Thodol a book about death or about life? The answer is both. It is a mirror that shows us the truth of consciousness itself, unbound by time. Death is simply the moment when the veil is thinnest, when the lessons we ignore in life confront us with full force. As we prepare to enter the practical dimension of this teaching, I invite you to reflect. What illusions in your own life function like bardos? Where do you turn away from the clear light of truth because it feels too vast, too uncomfortable, or too simple? Share your thoughts below. And if you haven't already, subscribe to join us as we now move into the heart of the matter, how these teachings can be lived, not just pondered. It is easy to revere the Bardo Thodol as an otherworldly scripture, meant only for monks and mystics. But its true power lies in its practicality. The Tibetans did not write it to decorate libraries. They wrote it to transform the way we live and die. The Bardos are not distant. They are here, now, unfolding in every moment of change. The first application is simple awareness of impermanence. Every ending in life, every heartbreak, every lost opportunity, every fading day is a rehearsal for death. Instead of turning away, the practice is to pause, to acknowledge, to let the dissolution be seen. When a job ends, when a relationship fades, when youth slips into age, this is a bardo. If we learn to face small deaths with clarity, we prepare ourselves for the great transition. Meditation is the cornerstone. Sitting in silence, watching the mind's flickering thoughts, one can recognize their illusory nature. Just as the Bardo Thodol says that deities and demons are projections, so too our everyday fears, cravings, and narratives dissolve when we see them clearly. A practical exercise. The next time a fear arises, name it as a wrathful deity. The moment you call it illusion, its power weakens. Another practice is dream yoga. Tibetan masters taught that the dream state mirrors the Bardo state. If you can recognize you are dreaming while asleep, you can also recognize the illusory visions of the afterlife. Begin by noticing the moments you wake up inside a dream. Then carry that same lucidity into waking life. Ask yourself, am I dreaming this moment? The practice trains the mind to remain awake within illusion. Breath practices are equally vital. The Tibetans spoke of the winds of energy that carry consciousness. By learning to slow the breath, to dwell in its stillness, we familiarize ourselves with the quiet space where the clear light shines. Inhale deeply, exhale fully, then rest in the gap before the next breath. That gap is a taste of eternity. The Bardo Thodol also teaches us to practice compassion. In the Bardos, fear tightens its grip when we cling to self. But when we remember others, when we wish them peace, the heart softens and illusions lose their hold. A daily ritual. Before sleep, offer a thought of compassion to someone who suffers. Imagine sending them light. This act conditions the mind to move toward love, even in the face of dissolution. Perhaps the most profound practice is recognition of the clear light. Of course, we may ask, how can one recognize something so subtle, so formless? The Tibetans advised us to notice moments of pure presence, those fleeting instants when thought drops away and only awareness remains. It may come in watching a sunrise, in deep meditation, or in sudden stillness during grief. These glimpses are not accidents. They are the training ground for the final moment of clarity. In daily life, we can also frame every challenge as a mini Bardo. When anger surges, recognize it as a wrathful deity. When joy overwhelms, see it as a peaceful deity. Both are luminous. Both are empty. This shift prevents us from being enslaved by emotions and opens the path to freedom here and now. For modern seekers, the value of the Bardo Thodol lies not only in its vision of death, but in its radical reminder, you are not bound to your illusions. Whether in life or in death, recognition is always possible. The practical path is to cultivate awareness, lucidity, compassion, and presence, so that when the veil lifts, you will not tremble, but recognize yourself in the light. Before we move into the conclusion, I invite you to pause and reflect. How might you begin treating daily changes, dreams or emotions as bardos, opportunities to awaken rather than distractions to flee? Share your reflections in the comments, and if you wish to walk further into these mysteries with us, make sure to subscribe. The journey does not end here. As we close this journey into the Bardo Thodol, it becomes clear that this text is not merely about death, it is about life. It is about the recognition that every moment is a threshold, every breath an opening, every thought a vision in the vast theater of mind. The Tibetans preserved this wisdom not to terrify us, but to liberate us. The Bardos teach us that reality is fluid, not fixed, that what we call the self is a mirage, endlessly shifting, endlessly dissolving. The terrifying visions of the afterlife are not punishments from outside, but reflections from within. And if the illusions of death are made of mind, then so are the illusions of life. The key is recognition. To live with the awareness of the Bardos is to live with courage. Instead of clinging to permanence, we embrace change. Instead of fearing endings, we learn to walk through them with presence. This shift transforms not only how we will face death one day, but how we face the countless small deaths unfolding all around us now. The Bardo Thodol whispers a radical message. Liberation is always possible. Not only in the monasteries of Tibet, not only at the moment of death, but here, in the ordinary moments of your day, when you wake from a dream, when you let go of an old fear, when you glimpse the silence behind thought. So I leave you with a question. If every moment is a bardo, what would it mean to live as though you are always preparing to awaken? If this exploration has stirred something within you, I invite you to share your reflections in the comments. What is your vision of the bardos? And if you wish to continue uncovering ancient wisdom, mysteries, and practical paths of transformation, be sure to subscribe to Labyrinth of the Veiled. The journey through the bardos is endless, but the light at its heart is always here, waiting to be recognized.